So you've just been listening to one of the nicest stories in the Gospel, really, a fascinating story. And I often think we miss some of the best parts of the story, and they're often in one single line. And so we'll try and maybe look at some of those little lines, and conscious of the time, we'll try and keep it short and to the point if that's possible. And the first thing that comes up there is Jacob's well. I want to say everything you read in the Bible is significant, and everything, there's nothing left to chance. So they met at Jacob's well. Now, what's so significant about Jacob's well? Well, Jacob's well was in a place called Sychar, as says in the Bible, or in the reading today, but the name of that town was Shechem. Shechem today is modern name, and as many of you here who have been to the Holy Land, I'm sure you have been there, today is called Nablus. And if you've been with Monsignor or with somebody else to the Holy Land, I'm sure that would have been part of the itinerary. When I visited the Holy Land a number of times, we always went to Nablus and to see Jacob's well. And Jacob's well, there's an almighty amount of history attached to Jacob's well. Because Jacob's well, Shechem, was the place where God made a covenant with Abraham. And there were many covenants made there. And it was there that the promise of the Messiah to come was also made. And another interesting part of Jacob's well, it became a place for young couples to meet because of the significance of the many covenants being made there. And so a young couple would meet there, and they would make their beautiful and personal covenant of love. And so Jacob's well was a very important place. I had the pleasure and the privilege, really, of being at the religious congress down in Anaheim for 2 days on Friday and Saturday. And on Friday morning, I went to a talk that probably I'll never forget as long as I live, because there was a young woman there, a black lady, and she was just phenomenal. And she acted out the story of the woman at Jacob's well, and she was really, and she put on, a veil and so on, and she came along with a jar on her head, and she's coming in the midday sun, and she's coming along. Oh, a man. A Jew. Huh. What is he doing there? Give me a drink. Oh, you haven't even got a bucket. He wants me, a Samaritan woman, and you a Jew, for a drink. Huh. And it went on like that. I know you wanted me to keep going, but I was just giving a little bit, and she was absolutely wonderful. Wonderful. Now, just to tell you a little story for a moment. There's a nice little story about, again, it fits in nicely with the covenant of love and marriage and so on. There was this young couple getting married, and the young bride went along to the wedding cake decorator, and she said, I want you to put on the cake, when you're finished, the inscription from the first letter to John, John's first letter, 4:18. Love casts out all fear. There is no perfect love. No, There is no fear in love. Perfect love casts out all fear. Beautiful thing to put on the wedding cake. But a poor guy decorating the wedding cake did not know the difference between an epistle or a letter and the gospel. So instead of putting on first letter to John 4:18, he put on, from what you have just listened to today, John 4:18, which said, "You have had 5 husbands, and the man you're with now is not your husband." Happy honeymoon. Now, how does the gospel of the Good Samaritan apply to us? Well, I tell you how it does very, very much. It's all a question of how we see people and how we judge people. And when we read the gospel of the Samaritan woman, I think we put her down as, a bad woman. She's had 5 husbands. Why do you think she had 5 husbands? Did that make her a bad person? Well, we got to go back to the time of Jesus, and in many parts of the world today too, in that culture, and many women still live in that culture. And in the culture in the time of Jesus, a woman had no rights, no place in society. She had nobody to defend her. And husbandless, she was absolutely marooned. Now, a man could divorce his wife in those days for any reason. So, for example, he could divorce her if she failed to get pregnant. He could divorce her, and this might apply to a lot of you, if she couldn't cook. For any simple reason, he could divorce her. So here was a woman who had been abused, discarded, rejected many, many times. So much so that she was afraid to appear when the other women would be going to the well, either early morning or late evening, not in the middle of the day when the sun was at its hottest and its highest. So she was a woman living in shame. And then she meets this man, and he sits down and he talks to her, and he looks at her. And what does Jesus see when he looks at her? He looks into her soul, into her heart, and he sees there himself. She's a daughter of God, made in the image of God. And he looks in and he sees this beautiful woman, this beautiful soul. Now look how we look at people. We judge them by what shape they are, whether they're tall or slim or not so slim, or we judge people by their color, by their accent, by where they came from, by how much money they have, by what kind of a job they have. All these things that don't matter. He looked at her, and he looked into her heart. And there's a beautiful part of the story that we might miss. He said to her, "Go and bring your husband." She said, "I don't have a husband." She never had. She had 5 men in her life who used her. It's a different thing. The man she had at the moment was her 6th. And then this man comes into her life, Jesus. What number is he? Number 7. Number 7. And 7 is the number in the scriptures that denotes perfection. And he was the first man in her life that loved her for herself, not for how he could use her or what he could get from her, but for herself. He looked at her, he loved her, because he could see into her heart and into her soul. And she received that love. And that Samaritan woman, when he asked for a drink, she let him drink from her jar. You have no idea, I have no idea of the significance of that. Have you ever heard the name of the Samaritan woman? She's always referred to as the Samaritan woman. Well, she had a name, because she was baptized by Jesus. And her name was, the name she had was Photini, Photini, Photini. And Photini, that word means the enlightened one. And she became the enlightened one. And we're told she suddenly left her jar and she ran back into the village where she was rejected and criticized, and people gossiped about her and spoke about her. And she said, "Come with me, I found a Messiah." And she was so convincing, because it came from the heart, not from the lips, that people ran to meet Jesus, to see for themselves. What was the significance of the fact that she left a jar behind her jar in which she would collect water? What was the significance of that? She left her old life behind. She became a new woman and a whole new life. And in her excitement, she forgot about her jar and everything else, because now she was a transformed woman. A transformed woman. Now, to conclude, what lesson can I take from the gospel today, and what lesson can you take? Very important lesson. And it is, meet people where they are, accept them where they are, and stop, for God's sake, and I mean for God's sake, judging. Pope Francis said, "Who am I to judge?" And we're too quick to judge. A woman and put it this way, go back a little bit in the church. And for the many people who are, maybe through no fault of their own, many women, many men, divorced or separated, where their husband or wife left, and for somebody else, they were rejected. And what did they find when they came to church? More rejection. Or you're not allowed to come to communion because you're a divorcee. Is that what Jesus would say? Is that what Jesus would say? Yes or no? No. Of course he wouldn't. He accepted everybody. He was totally inclusive. And we need to, Jesus never said, worship me. He said, follow me. We got to be imitators of Jesus. We've got to be like him if we're true Christians, true followers. And so we need to stop being so quick to judge. Not you, me too, because I've been guilty of that. Very easy to judge. Look at people, oh, I'm better than him or better than her. I'm not. I'm not. Everybody has a unique dignity. So we got to accept people where they are. That means accept people who are poor, people who are homeless, people who are separated, people who are gay or lesbian or transgender. Every one of them is loved by God. Loved by God. And we got to accept them. So I want you to use that from now on as a mantra. as a mantra, who am I to judge? Say it after me. Who am I to judge? Say after that, Amen.
Amen.
And let that be your resolution from now on. Who am I to judge? And every time you're tempted to judge, stop, think, and say, who am I to judge? Amen. Now let's start.